Hi, everybody. My name is Greg Katz, and welcome to WeAreSC's Inside the Trojans Huddle. Inside the Trojans Huddle is a game-like panel discussion with WeAreSC columnists and staff writers. We start with the pregame show, where we introduce our panel members Inside the Trojans Huddle, give you the latest USC Trojans news as well. First, let's meet this week's panelists. Marc Kulkin, WeAreSC columnist who writes the Monday Morass, Yay or Nay, Sunday Takeaways, in addition to regular season practice reports. Chris Arledge, former William Jewell College defensive back and team captain, and WeAreSC columnist who writes the popular column Musings with Arledge. Erik McKinney, publisher and editor-in-chief of WeAreSC.com, and Greg Katz, that's moderator of Inside the Trojans, and WeAreSC columnist who writes the obvious and not so obvious and IMHO Sunday. Before we kick off, here's the latest USC football news. Super Bowl 56, won by the Los Angeles Rams over the Cincinnati Bengals at SoFi Stadium on Sunday, included a number of USC Trojan dignitaries. Most spotted and confirmed were head coach Lincoln Riley, Pro Football Hall of Famers Anthony Munoz and Tony Baselli, former All-American tailback Reggie Bush, USC Athletic Department official Brad Sosta, and USC quarterback Caleb Williams. And let's not forget former USC wide receiver great Robert Woods, who was unable to play for the Rams on Sunday due to recovering from an ACL surgery. Former two-time USC All-America offensive tackle Tony Baselli, who played for the Trojans in 1992 through 1994, was publicly announced as Pro Football's latest USC Hall of Fame inductee and will represent the Jacksonville Jaguars, the team that originally drafted him out of college. Tony is already a member of the College Football Hall of Fame, the USC Athletic Hall of Fame, and the Cotton Bowl Hall of Fame. And if you ever wondered how big the Caleb Williams transfer from Oklahoma to USC meant, just know that Caleb, who has yet to throw a pass for the Trojans, appeared last week, as many of you know, on ABC's Good Morning America with Robert and Roberts, and Caleb was wearing a Cardinal and gold USC college shirt. And 5 Trojans have been invited to the NFL Scouting Combine: Drake London, Drake Jackson, Keontae Ingram, Chris Steele, and Isaac Taylor Stewart. And as a administrative addition, USC has hired Ohio State's Weston Zernickel as the new assistant director of player personnel. And finally, friends, WeAreSC's Inside the Trojans Huddle greatly appreciates your viewership and listenership. We appreciate and encourage those of you that are watching on sites like YouTube. We invite you to click on the red subscriber button and hit the like button as well. It's all greatly appreciated, and it's free. All right, it's time for the opening kickoff and our first quarter. Overwhelming attention has been focused on the Trojans transfer quarterback Caleb Williams. And if you are USC quarterback Miller Moss, who's returning, you'll be competing with Caleb in the spring. How would you handle the whole Caleb situation leading up to spring ball? And what would be your mindset during spring ball and afterwards if you don't win the job? Marc, you're our leadoff hitter as usual. If you were Caleb Williams, if you were Miller Moss, how would you handle the whole situation?
I'd handle it the way I've been handling it. Waiting for spring camp to start, and I'm going to go show my new head coach that, you know what, I know you've got your predetermined Heisman hopeful starter standing right next to you in Caleb Williams, but, you know, I'm here, and I'm going to show what I'm going to do. And, you know, I've been around here. I've watched football long enough. I've played the game long enough. I'm one play away. So, you know, Miller's a smart kid. He's not going to just walk away. That's just not who he is. If he was going to do that, I think he would have done it by now. And even if he somehow doesn't win the competition, you know, he's going to stick around. He's the second man up. There's no one behind him. He knows that. So, you know, sorry for the short answer, but there's really, for me, there's no other way to look at it.
Chris Arledge, is there any other way to look at it? How would you approach it?
There might be another way to look at it, but Marc's right. Miller Moss doesn't have a problem. As Marc mentioned, he's one play away. And you're talking about being one play away behind a quarterback who runs around a lot. at some point, it's not impossible to imagine Caleb Williams getting dinged and Miller Moss going in. Besides, Moss has 4 more years of eligibility left. Caleb Williams will likely be gone in 2. And that means that the real competition for Miller Moss happens in 2 years with Malachi Nelson. If he loses that competition, then he probably has to go somewhere else where he can play. But there's no reason to assume he'll lose that competition. He will have 3 years of college football under his belt at that point, 2 with Lincoln Riley, who's a great quarterback developer. He will know the system very well. And while Nelson is a good athlete, I don't think he is the type of dual threat that Caleb Williams is. I don't think he's a guy that's going to go 80 yards on a scramble. And so the athleticism gulf that exists between Moss and Williams probably won't exist to the same degree with Nelson. And Nelson, while he's a 5-star quarterback, hasn't yet proven it at the college level. And we know that 5-star quarterbacks don't always pan out. So if I'm Miller Moss, I'm going to learn what I can over the next 2 years. I'm going to play if need arises. Hopefully it won't. And then I'm going to try to win that quarterback competition in a couple of years and have 2 years as a starting quarterback in a high-powered Lincoln Riley offense.
Erik McKinney, you're in the shoes of Miller Moss. How do you handle it?
You guys,
what do you do?
you guys convinced me. I'm sticking around. That's it. That's all I needed to hear. No, it absolutely makes sense. You look at USC's quarterback position, and you got to go back to 2017 before you find a year where the starter went all the way through. 2018, the backup came in right away. 2019, dinged up, and you got guys kind of coming in off the bench there. 2020, Keaton Slovis made it all the way through, but that's a 6-game year, and he's done at the end of that season. That Oregon game, he's out. If they had to play, the rest of the year, a full season, he's not there. And then this past year too, where they had to go 3 deep again. Same thing in 2018, they had to go 3 deep. So again, it's not something that is absolutely insane that the backup would have to go in. I think Miller Moss at this point, spring ball is kind of a guarantee. You see what goes on and how that happens. This season, same thing. I'd stick it out and see what happens there. At that point, boy, you're real close to a USC degree. And for someone like Miller Moss, where that means a lot, I don't know how you could pick up and leave before that spring ball. Because like you said, it's tough for him to have a guy like Caleb Williams come in. Had it been just anyone else who maybe had no experience in the Lincoln Riley offense, you think, all right, he'll fight for it and maybe Miller wins this spring. I don't think there's any thought that he's going to beat out Caleb Williams. But like you guys said, playing the long game, if you want to be the USC starting quarterback, you can't do that if you transfer somewhere else. You've got to be at USC to try to make that happen. So I think there's a lot of reasons for him to stick around and again take that fight to Malachi Nelson or down the road when you're older and can fill in or step in, I guess, after Caleb Williams. So again, a lot of reasons where on the surface someone looking at this would go, hey, you got to try to play somewhere else. But I think looking at it kind of deeper, there are a lot of reasons for him to stick around and stay at USC.
Yeah, I think that it's all about the big picture with Miller Moss. I think he's a real competitor. I think that he'll be learning. He knows that he doesn't know the offense like Caleb Williams knows. So he knows that Caleb's going to look better to even if he wasn't, quote, Caleb Williams. The bottom line to me is that he looks at that big picture, as you guys have already mentioned, and he knows based on basically with Jackson Dart going, it was addition by subtraction. So he's up to behind Caleb. We know that Caleb carried the ball, I think it was an average of something like 6 times a game or something of that nature, close to it. I think that Miller's in really actually a good position. He's going to have no real pressure if he says, look, I'm going to give it my best shot, whatever happens, happens. But using that big picture to me is the real key, that he sees a bigger thing. And you know what? I wouldn't discount him at all as far as his future is concerned at USC, because when you got a running quarterback as well as a passing one, anything can happen. We all know that. I think we saw that in the last couple of years, and I think Miller Moss has seen it as well. So I think he will battle, and that's the most important thing. Just do what you can do. All right, let's go on to the second quarter. Well, with this spring practice cycle arriving, what we think will be shortly, what do you, the panel, see as the biggest question marks or challenges regarding offense? Erik, with you.
It's the offensive line. Again, we always talk about the offensive line. I don't think it's necessarily, who are the starters or are they going to be good or whatever. It's how quickly can they figure out how to run Lincoln Riley's offense, and can they do it at a level that some of these Oklahoma offensive lines have done it. That 2018 Oklahoma offensive line and some of those that have just kind of shoved guys to the NFL there. Can USC get that done right now with this very veteran offensive line? There are guys coming back that absolutely know how to play football and played well last year. How quickly can they sort of turn themselves into the type of offensive line that Lincoln Riley needs, that can control the line of scrimmage and blow guys off the ball? Are they fast enough to kind of pull the way Lincoln Riley is going to ask them to pull? How quickly do they get into kind of that state of mind and everything you need to be the offensive line that USC, that Lincoln Riley needs to run his offense? I'm going to be watching that, because ultimately the group of wide receivers, the group of running backs, someone good is going to line up at those spots for USC this year. But how good that offensive line can get quickly is what I'm watching this spring.
All right, Marc Kulkin, what are you looking at as the challenges and the question marks for you in terms of the offense in general?
So, Erik he brought up the offensive line, and I'll continue from there, and I'm going to go to a different position group. But with the offense, here's what everyone I think has to accept. The roster is set through spring camp. There's not going to be any additions to the offensive line group until after spring camp. And that's if it happens. So with everything that Erik was talking about, picking up the offense, doing it the right way, yada, yada, yada. If you bring some guys in after spring camp during the summer, you're basically back to step one, ground zero again. So they know what they're getting with the offensive line group. It's now just picking who's the starters, identifying who are the starters, who are the backups. So I kind of disagree with Erik a little bit, which is odd because usually in lock and step with him. I think the difference where the challenge is going to be with the wide receiver group. For the first time in a while, USC doesn't have a number one wide receiver. So you've got a lot of talent in that group. You've got a bunch of guys who transferred in. All of a sudden, you had an alpha guy. Now you don't have an alpha guy to kind of control the group, to kind of keep the pack. And it's going to be interesting to see, who steps up out of that group to kind of say, hey, I'm number one, and everyone kind of rally around me. And how Lincoln's going to kind of, and the wide receiver coaches, there's 3 of them as of they're going to use. So how they're going to be able to, kind of corral that group. It's going to be interesting to me.
All right, we are in a unique position because Chris, you have played college level. You know how much you have to learn playbook. From your perspective, the challenge of learning the playbook and functioning at maximum capacity is a big challenge for the offense.
Yeah, it is a big challenge. Cohesion is always really important for an offense. I mean, defensive players have to play together and they have to be on the same page. But you can take a great edge rusher and stick him in the game, and he'll be a great edge rusher from day one. And it doesn't really matter that much if the will linebacker is out to lunch. That guy's still going to do his job and be effective. Offense doesn't work that way, which is why early in fall camp and in spring camp, you usually see the defense ahead of the offense. So offense requires cohesion. It requires coming together and working together in a special way. Now think about this. Not only do all the returning USC players have a completely new system to learn, but you're going to get major minutes and contributions from people from Colorado, Oklahoma, Oregon, Stanford, Virginia, and modern day high school. That's a lot of guys from a lot of different places learning a new system. It's not a matter of bringing in 2 or 3 guys from the outside and incorporating them into a system where everybody else is really on the same page. That's the biggest challenge. USC's offense will be the best offense in the Pac-12 by the end of the season. The question is, how long does it take to get there? And do they drop a game or two along the way that they should not have lost while they're trying to get set? And that's what we're going to find out.
Well, I don't think it's going to be as much about frontline players. The challenge is going to be who backs up the frontline players. I can tell you right now, Caleb Williams is going to start at quarterback. I can tell you right now that unless we have a major LA earthquake, we know that Travis Dye is going to be the starting running back. We know basically, probably, I would say, maybe 40 or 80%, we know who's going to start on the offensive line. I think wide receiver is going to be fascinating to watch. I think there's talent. I think the new talent coming in, I think Mario Williams, will be starting at one wide receiver. It seems inevitable that he will be doing that. It's possible that Jerry Rice's son will may pick up the other spot if he lives up to the preseason or pre-spring practice billing. I think that who's going to back up these guys? We know the offensive line, as we said. We know that Nealon's going to start at center. We know that Bobby Haskins is going to start at either left or right tackle. We know that. Where is Dedich going to be? But who's going to back up Dedich? Where is Cortland Ford going to be? There's Monheim. We kind of know who's going to be in the mix there. It's how quickly, to me, not only do the players have to learn the new system, that some of the coaches have to learn the new system as well. You got a new offensive line coach in Hansen. We know that Lincoln Riley likes to pull his offside guard and tackle and stuff, but I think that's all fundamental stuff. It's just a matter of terminology. But I think overall, I think the offense will be easy to figure out, the starters. It's going to be more of who is going to back up, but even more important that we may not find out in the spring is who's coming in after spring ball. That's the big key, because I think, and I could be wrong here, Mark, you might be able to chime in on this too. Look, I've heard that spring practice is going to start on March 7th. I've heard it's going to start later. I did some investigation on it when Lincoln Riley was at Oklahoma. His spring practices generally started late in March, and they had a late in April spring game. And I started thinking, well, of course, that was Oklahoma. What do we have now for offense? But the point I think I'm thinking about is, if he does have a late spring practice, despite the fact that he says, well, I can't wait to get this thing started, the later he starts, the more other programs across the country are going to be finished with spring practice. That happens. Players that aren't first string, or players who are dissatisfied, whatever the reason is, will put their name in the portal. And if he can have a spring practice that lasts 2 weeks longer than most spring practices, he can get some of those guys that jump in the portal and get them to USC at the conclusion of the last week of USC spring practice, and really start selling it, let the players that might come see what's happening. So I think there is a certain strategy to where he starts spring practice and where he doesn't. So it will be something to keep an eye on as far as I'm concerned. Erik, you chimed in. Did we get to you, or we already got to you?
We did, and then Mark absolutely shut me down. But it seems like everyone's kind of on the same page, right? Like how quickly this thing can get going, and kind of the key spots. If it's wide receivers catching passes, offensive line blocking, everyone's sort of jumping on the same page. I think that's kind of again, offensively, that mesh point. They talk about mesh point when you're handing it off and that sort of thing. But mesh point of the whole offense coming together and getting rolling. How long that takes, and Chris has got a look on his face like he wants to say something too.
Well, no, let's say something. Oh, go ahead, Mark.
No, I was going to
pointing aggressively.
I'm kicking the ball to you so you can take it in for the score. Your point was the offense needs time to come together. So whether they start soon, which we're hoping they do, or start later, it doesn't matter. If to Greg's point, if they're looking to shuffle more players after the fact, getting the offense to mesh at some point has to start. And you can't do it if you're constantly looking to move maybe 1 or 2 more players, 3 or 4 more players here or there. It's just, you got to go with what you got. Go ahead, Chris. I think
I don't have much more to. I was just going to apologize to Erik. I mean, he gives an answer. Marc then trashes him and says he doesn't like the answer. And Greg, after, I don't know, a minute and a half, had forgotten that he even said anything. And I think you're a better contributor than that, Erik. I think you've been treated badly today.
We got to get the I need some orange slices. We got to regroup. We got to hit halftime here.
You know what? That's an excellent segue. Thank you, Erik. Let's go to halftime. All right, here's the question. The Rams have won the Super Bowl, which will place heavy focus on the NFL fan-wise in LA. Does the Rams' victory in winning the Super Bowl put more pressure on USC to win a national championship sooner rather than later? And what can USC do to counteract the growing Rams popularity to reach a potential fan base that includes not only past fans that no longer go to the Coliseum, potential fans that are thinking about going to attend USC games, or just general fans in general? Chris, address those questions, please.
I don't think USC has to worry about that. While it's probably true that having NFL teams means that there are some casual football fans that will buy Rams tickets instead of USC tickets, what USC has to do is win and be entertaining. And if they do that, then they're going to draw crowds. NFL attendance and college football attendance have been dropping for years now. And so, it is tougher to get people to the stadium. Everybody has really nice televisions and it's comfortable just sitting at home. So getting people to the seats requires you to put a really good product on the field, which I think they're probably going to do. But here's the thing. USC with Lincoln Riley is in a long-term situation. You would expect that they will get better this year, better the year after that, and be good for a number of years into the future. That's not going to be the case with the LA Rams. That's not the way the NFL works. The Rams went all in on this season, and it paid off. 2 years from now, the Rams will be 8-8. Rams fans aren't going to like me saying that, but that's the reality. And so that's nothing for USC to worry about. Their job is to win football games and be fun and exciting. And if they do that, people will show up. And I think that's probably going to happen.
You agree with that, Erik? Is that what's probably going to happen?
Yeah, it's not just the Rams, right? The Dodgers won, the Lakers won. Like there's a lot of winning going on in LA right now, but I still don't think any of those things put more pressure on USC to win a national championship than just hiring Lincoln Riley. That was stepping into the spotlight and saying, this is what we're gonna win. You don't hire Lincoln Riley with the idea of, maybe we'll be okay. No, you go and get him to win national championships. And so that was USC kind of volunteering themselves to say, yeah, that's what we're going to do. The other teams winning, I don't see that being a big issue. And USC, again, like Chris said, if they're winning and they're fun to watch, people are going to come out. If they have to buy USC and Rams tickets, then they will. But I think for the most part, people love it when USC is good, and the Coliseum, do stadiums get filled anymore? Like Chris said, the attendance has kind of been an issue for all kinds of reasons, and we've seen that for a long time here. But people are going to come out to see USC if they're winning. And again, hiring Lincoln Riley says we plan to be winning.
Marc, how do you see this whole thing with the NFL and getting fans to come to the Coliseum?
Yeah, I don't want to say anything above what Erik just said because it was gold. So, yeah, Erik. He took the halftime speech and he ran with it.
It's a beautiful thing, isn't it?
And he's right. USC does not, they don't compete with the professional dollar. The celebrities and the elite and everybody wants to come out and watch winners, regardless if it's USC or, the other school across town. USC we saw that during the Pete Carroll years. So, when I had season seats, my seats were actually better than Bruce Willis. That guy was sitting behind me 20 rows. So that's where the competition.
You're big time, Marc. That's impressive.
I was standing in the herd, section 13. In fact, right over your right shoulder you could probably see me a little bit standing there.
Listen to Mark name dropping though. Do you hear that? You know, I get better seats than Bruce Willis. I'm a big deal. Okay.
That was back in 2005. So
Yeah.
Well, you know, he was known as
Mark.
Mark was once known as Hollywood Mark in the
Yes.
herd. He was actually a bobblehead. You may not be aware of that, but they actually had a bobblehead for Mark.
I am still called a bobblehead. So absolutely.
not
so-
a knucklehead, but a bobblehead.
Yeah. So they're not competing for the professional dollar. You know, just win and everybody will show up. And regardless, you know, if it's a big game, the stadium will sell out. Other than that, you know, USC is going to get their stadium filled 75%, 80% when they're winning. So, yeah, there's no extra pressure. The pressure is what USC puts on themselves when they're taking their PR guys around to the Super Bowl yesterday, and they're making sure they're getting Lincoln Riley photographed. They're getting Reggie Bush and Caleb Williams photographed. That's the pressure. You're saying, you know, we're winning like what's going on behind us. And if you're going to do that, you're going to promote it. You know, you can't just talk about it. You got to walk it. So that's where the pressure will be. It's not competing for the dollar. LA's got the dollars to compete. That's not the issue.
Well, I will tell you this. I'm actually fired up that the Rams won the Super Bowl because I do think it puts pressure on USC to remind them of where they need to be. You know, I thought that Chris brought up a good point as far as players and, you know, celebrity players, flashy players. Look, there was a picture, I think many of you saw it on Twitter with Reggie Bush and, you know, Lincoln Riley and the whole thing and Caleb Williams and Reggie Bush. SC has the star power. SC, for at least as long as I've been following them, which is a long time, has always been able to be on. When you started, who were the three top sports programs, pro or amateur, in Los Angeles? It's always been the Dodgers, the Lakers, or the Lakers and the Dodgers, and at worst, USC. USC is the closest to an event when SC is going well, tailgating and everything. And I'll tell you what, you know that Snoop Dogg just loves USC. You know it. And Dr. Dre just loves USC. I have no doubt that Caleb Williams, after they obliterate Rice, which I'm going on the record right now, I know that's not a big thing.
That's a gutsy call, Greg.
You know, I was hoping that I know that was a little difficult for you to handle, Chris, but you know, the bottom line is the average fan just going to read that scoreboard. They're going to watch TV and look at the highlights. Look at Caleb Williams is one of the few players that has ever entered USC as a transfer, whether it's portal or whether it's JC, whatever, that has this amount of acclaim. And if he passes for 300 yards and runs for 100 against Rice, I mean, to tell you, Snoop will be on that sideline. I think one of the interesting factors, honestly, is we know from his history that Lincoln Riley runs basically a very vanilla with the media in Norman, Oklahoma, that you could do that. But I think that he's going to see the big advantage, and I'm sure that Pete Carroll will tell him, you bring in some of those people, famous people like Snoop Dogg, the kids relate to, and they're at your practices. He's going to put that on Twitter. I mean, I get Twitter like most of you guys, and I get the Lincoln Riley Twitter, and he's tweeting all over the place. Reggie Bush and everybody else, he gets it. The question is can he get himself to do it so it shows up in practices, at the games? We'll see. I think they're in great shape. I agree with Mark. The USC fan, the question is, can they get the USC fans that were so turned off to come back as a season ticket holder and watch games again? Or are those people going to say, you know what, I don't miss getting up or getting home late to the games. I enjoyed it on TV. It's not as important as it once was. Can you get those people to come back? You know, the Rams are, and it was, I put this in my column, the Rams are really basing 8, 9, 10-year-olds watching that Super Bowl and becoming the fans of the future. And what SC has to do is arrive at a big time program. You know, I was thinking about this. You have the national champions in high school in modern day. You have the pro football champions in the Rams. And by the way, I agree with Chris. They'll go 8-8 in a couple of years because they sold their soul for this year, and good for them. It worked out, beautiful thing. But in 2 years, all those draft choices they gave up, and who knows what's going to happen. But I think that SC is in a good position, but they have to strike now. They have to strike now. One of the things that I think is going to be interesting is how fast will number 13 jerseys be out on the streets in Los Angeles after the first couple of games? And number 13 is what Caleb Williams is going to be wearing. Chris, I know your lips are moving. I thought you were a freaking ventriloquist.
First of all, you heard it. You heard it here first, America. USC will beat Rice in the opener, and the world will be so excited by that Rice win that all the Hollywood stars, all the kids will be buying 13 jerseys. That's big news, Greg. You broke big news today.
Chris. What is
no,
it?
Hold on. I'm not done.
You're never done. That's the problem.
Only the second biggest news of that halftime. That was the biggest halftime of this weekend, despite the fact that this is Super Bowl weekend, because we got your prediction on Rice, which was something, and we heard Marc Kulkin talk about how he gets better tickets to games than Hollywood stars. Hey, Kulkin, who was sitting behind you at the Super Bowl? Is Al Pacino 20 yards behind you in the Super Bowl?
Yeah, you know what? My seat was the throne in the in the men's library.
All right. Well,
Chris, I'm going to move on here, but I do have a question because I know that we all respect your views highly on this program, and I know that viewers even saying that you should have your own show.
They're right.
And I couldn't agree with that more.
Yeah.
Oregon fans would tune in. Oregon would be the first fans to tune in.
There's no question about that.
Mark. Let him ask his question. What's your question? What's your question on the Arledge show? What is it?
You'll have to say please. All right. My question to you, counselor, is what will the score of the Rice game be?
47-10.
You have that much confidence that Rice can score 10 points?
Rice is going to come up.
Don't stutter. You just think that it's 10 points.
What is that?
You're stuttering again. Now, just 10 points is, you think that Rice can score 10 points against USC's defense?
Greg, first of all, there are children out there that have speech impediments, and they are not at all happy with what you're doing right now. Okay. Second, Rice is going to score points in garbage time. They're going to score late in the game when we have the third stringers in there. That's assuming the USC's defense doesn't look like it did last year, but I think that's our third quarter segue. So let's ding that bell and get going.
Well, we'll do that as soon as I say this. Before we begin the second half, a reminder that you're watching or listening to WeAreSC.com's Inside the Trojans Huddle. This week's WeAreSC panelists include Marc Kulkin, Chris Arledge, Erik McKinney, and I'm Greg Katz. We encourage you to check out WeAreSC.com on the inner part of the On3 network and become a subscriber to the best coverage of USC football and Trojans athletics. And as a bonus, for those of you that are curious, there's currently a free WeAreSC 7-day free trial, and you can view our exclusive On3 Plus content. Okay, there is the bell. We begin the second half kickoff and third quarter with this topic, which is kind of an add-on from the second quarter. What are the biggest question marks or challenges in spring practice defensively? And we'll start off with Marc Kulkin. What are the challenges or questions that we need to find out for spring practice?
Can we start somewhere else? I'm waiting on hold for my reservations at the Laundry restaurant. So, but no, you can start on the defensive line, you can start at linebacker, and you can work your way through the secondary. There are questions everywhere. So you were kind of throwing a hissy fit about, to Chris, that Rice is going to score 10 points. Greg, you do remember last year's defense, right? Yes.
Mark, I was just kidding.
I know, but even if you
jumped on me, that I've never seen this side of you. Wait a minute, Mark. I want you to finish this. Chris is already moving his lips and words.
No, I'm not. I'm just going to say.
Oh, wait, Chris, we will get.
I'm not going to stutter and get mocked by you again. I'm just going to sit here and be quiet.
No, this is really where Lincoln Riley and his staff are going to have their challenges, is just getting the defense capable of, shutting out Rice, which, at USC, shutting out Rice that shouldn't be a topic of conversation. There's a lot of question marks on defense. There are no starters returning in the secondary or at cornerback for sure. You've got a lot of experience returning, but you don't have any starters returning. Defensive line, you've got Thule, you've got the potential of Corey Foreman. And then from there, you've got potential. And you can say that at the linebacker position. So, I don't need to belabor this. Erik and Chris, they can take over. You can pick a position and you've got some question marks. All
right. Maybe we can get some answers on those question marks from Chris. Chris?
Yeah, I'm happy to belabor it. Look, last year's USC defense was probably the worst USC defense I've ever seen. They were terrible at all three levels. They were out of position, they were undisciplined, they were lazy, they were bad tacklers. They were terrible. So there are question marks all over the place. There's nothing but question marks. And you add to that the fact that USC or Oklahoma under Lincoln Riley was not always great defensively either. And the defense has a lot of question marks. Last year, Rice would have hung 30 on USC's defense. That's what they're trying to bounce back from. Now, they have some new guys that I think will help. They have some younger guys that didn't play nearly as much as they should have last year that may help. You have guys like Corey Foreman who may have breakout seasons, but there are question marks all over the place. And that's why the offense needs to get cohesive in a hurry, because USC may have to win some games 42-38 this year.
How do you feel about that, Erik? Is that what we're looking at? High scoring games, or what are the challenges that they can get accomplished in spring ball?
This is where I say they're both absolutely wrong, and I disagree with everything that they said. Yes, right. So if I'm kind of taking a smaller approach, corner is probably the spot that I'm maybe most interested in. You lose both those starters. You've got a couple guys back, Prophet Brown and Sierra, and then you bring in two guys, Latrell McCutcheon and Mekhi Blackman. And so how does that shake out that depth chart? But there's nothing more important than the front seven. You mentioned Thule, Nick Figueroa. You love what you have there. Maybe the best set of kind of bookend defensive ends in the conference. Outside of that, every position. And there's a couple new guys coming in. How do they fit? What does it look like? And before Mark jumps on this, yes, I would assume that there are additional front seven guys coming in after spring ball. So I don't think you need to have all your answers. What do we look like against Rice? What do we look like in the second half of the season? You're not going to find those answers, I think, coming out of spring or in spring, but you need to, I don't know, bake the cake and then add the frosting. Like you need a good sense of what you do have and that sort of stuff in place there in the front seven. And you need to get back to where when you're USC and you take the field against Rice or against some of the bottom half of the Pac-12, that you win it getting off the bus, that the other team shows up to the Coliseum or whatever, and they know we can't run the ball against these guys. We know that we're going to be in trouble. Can you start to kind of maybe establish some of that thought this spring in that front seven? We saw the monumental challenge when the old new staff came in and all that defensive mindset and all that. There was a lot of talk about what we're going to do and what we're going to bring. The lift from where they were before that to try to get to it was huge. And they've got kind of the same thing here, and expecting one off season to get 4 years of work done. That's a lot. It's a big ask, I think, for this defense, but you want to start seeing it in spring. And so that for me is the question. Can the defense set the tone, especially in that front seven? What kind of mindset is there? What kind of talent is there with adding some of those new guys? And what do you have at the end of spring ball up there along the line of scrimmage for USC? And there's position battles and things like that. And you need the secondary to play better across the board with a bunch of new faces who are going to get a lot more time. Saw some time last year, but for me, it's that front seven and kind of the mentality that they end up bringing.
Well, I think that getting the defense to play better, I'm optimistic about it. And the reason I'm optimistic about it is it's easier to teach defense than it is offense. You could plug in a guy that would come, let's say, not during spring ball or participate in spring ball. Somebody who transfers in for August training camp. You could plug him in on the defensive line. And I think that it would just be a matter of just getting experience along with the other players. I like that. I think that they plug the middle linebacker position, with the Alabama transfer. The question really is on defense, where I don't think depth is a problem in the secondary. I think experience maybe a little bit there. But how much more can Randall Goforth improve? What is Corey Foreman going to do? I'm really fascinated. What are they going to do with him? The challenge is for Corey Foreman. In fact, I don't know why it hit me this way. I saw a picture. I don't know if maybe Mark took it or something at the basketball game. There's a picture of Caleb Williams sitting next to Corey Foreman. And I got to think that Caleb Williams will have a big impact on Corey Foreman. Something tells me that Corey Foreman is going to feel a lot of reasons. I think he felt a lot of reasons anyway, because he's been pretty much dissed in the offseason about, overrated. But I think Caleb Williams is the type of guy that can look at him and say, look, I didn't come in here to be 4-8. And I need a defense. I don't care how many points we score. You got to be there. Mark, you wanted to say something?
No, to your picture, to the point of your picture, before, the students filled in the student section, there were 2 rows of seats that were reserved for the 5-star football players. They were stationed there specifically to make sure the cameras caught them for the media, for the TV, for everybody. So yeah, Corey Foreman was brought to that game, sat down next to Caleb Foreman. They're the jewels supposedly of this football roster. You had CJ Williams back there, Damani Jackson. There's still a mystery player. Have we figured out who that player was yet, Eric, in the white t-shirt? Have you figured that out yet?
No, I didn't pin it, but I did want to jump
in. He was in that reserved row.
I did want to jump in here, Chris. I can only assume that Greg took a direct shot at you with that defense is easier to teach thing as a corner. I assume what he means is just any idiot can walk in and play corner.
It turns out not any idiot can, because I didn't play it particularly well. So it might have been a shot at me. That's within Greg's character to do that sort of thing. But I didn't take offense. Greg, I forgive you.
He's trying to damage
I'm
the
actually at a
spin-off
loss
ratings.
for words. It's not often that I can be at a loss for words, but Chris has a way. I feel like I'm on a witness stand being deposed. And I will say this.
That's one of the requests I get most from people is, can you find a way to make Greg Katz at a loss for words? So that's really my fundamental goal coming in every week.
Well, you know what? I think you're accomplishing your goal. I have to give you credit for that. I will say this. Brandon Peely is very important for this team. If he comes back healthy, if he plays to maximum efficiency, he could be a big help being lined up over center or shading one way or the other. If he gets in shape, he knows what it's like to be out of football now. He knows that your lifespan can go on any given play, whether it's during a game or in practice. So I think he's a big key. If they can get some stuff proven in the spring that he can help, I think it's going to be a good thing. I'm looking forward to seeing the progress on defense. In fact, I'll be honest with you, I haven't been this excited for spring ball in a long, long time. I can tell you, I've just been weaned on when SC is great. I know, Lincoln Riley always brings this up. I know what a championship team looks like. Not only do I know what a championship team looks like, I have been coaching on championship teams. I don't care whether it's high school or it's college or the NFL. There is a feeling in practice or during games when you're with a championship team. And I never felt that with Clay Helton's team. I used to walk in there dreading practice. I love seeing the media guys and shooting the bull with them, but to watch those practices was like, man, I might as well be watching paint dry. And I think that Lincoln Riley's practices are going to be fascinating. I hope he lets us all in. That'll be an interesting concept. Like I said, he might have to change, but defensively, no, I think that the Trojans could be better. From the comments that Lincoln Riley makes, he says that, there's a lot more answers than there are questions. So I'm sure with Alex Grinch, I think he was a little bit more reserved when we saw him in that introduction of coaches to the media, which is okay. But I think the SC defense is going to be better. It just has to be better, because I agree with Chris. The offense is going to be by the end of the season, they really could challenge Notre Dame if they can learn how to stop people and not make it a Jerry Lewis telethon, high numbers. So we'll see. All right, let's move on. All right, we've been getting the fourth quarter, and I think with my new background, I'm so pleased to do my lighting of the Coliseum torch.
The highlight of the show.
It is. It's definitely, I'm worried about, Mark has other business he has to do. And I know that I'm checking our clock here, and see Mark just checked the clock again. It's paranoid.
He's got to hang out with his Hollywood friends.
Well, I understand he was going out with Dustin Hoffman tonight. They're going to sit there and we'll have a private screening of The Graduate again. And, that I think, or maybe it's Heaven Can Wait with.
You know me, I'm out there flaunting without a mask as often as I can. So it's just another opportunity.
I think you were Mr. COVID, I think of 2020, right?
That was me.
All right. Well, we had a segment last time that I think worked pretty well. Questions from our viewers or listeners. Again, those of you who'd like to ask a question of our astute panel, you can go to the WeAreSC message boards, either go to the Gary P board or the WeAreSC members message. If you have a question, you'll see the topic thread regarding questions for Inside the Trojans Huddle. So let's go to the questions. Guys, feel free to jump in. We don't have to have any formal, you start us off. This is from Red Eye USC in frozen Catskills, New York. Will the Pac-12 championship game remain in Las Vegas? Now that I believe USC is a potential perennial champion, I plan to attend every year, if only to defrost for the weekend. So feel free to jump right in here. Is the Pac-12 championship game going to remain in Vegas? Who wants to take a crack at that one?
It's there this year. When they announced that it was going to go to Vegas, it was for last year and for this year, and there has been no official statement about going beyond that. You have to assume, right, with SoFi in LA, that's going to push to host it at some point. The Raiders Stadium, absolutely, I think is it. If it bounces back every couple years, trades back and forth, I could see it being that. I guess I don't see them saying, hey, for the next 40 years, we're definitely going to only have it in Vegas. But I would assume that those are two pretty safe bets, that it'll be in one of those two stadiums for at least the foreseeable future.
And wherever it is, it's going to be warmer than that place in New York, the frozen place. So he's still good.
And I can guarantee you it won't be in Norman, Oklahoma. So I could see it rotating between Vegas, SoFi, maybe Arizona. You got 3 warm weather environments, 3 really nice NFL type of stadiums. So for the time being, it's, Eric said, it'll be in Vegas for this coming season. And then who knows what it'll be for next few seasons after that. They'll explore it. Clive Koff likes to play, he likes to go whichever way the wind is blowing, so to speak, it seems.
Well, I tell you, I think
that doesn't sound like a vote of confidence there, Mark. I mean, you miss the old guy, you miss Tennis Larry?
No, I'm not a fan of people who follow trends and go with trends just because it's the cool thing to do. Again, it was a great halftime show, but I guarantee you those guys aren't on Clive Koff's shuffle. Promise you. It was a cool tweet, though.
Okay.
I will just chime in. I think that when SC gets really good, which is hopefully sooner rather than later. And they play that game in Las Vegas. If it's that particular year, I think the amount of fans that will go to USC will be massive, because I think the idea of, going to Las Vegas, it's an easy jaunt. You don't even have to fly. I think if, Kolakov sees that, he's going to get all, warm and fuzzy, say, look, we should keep it in Vegas. We have our basketball tournament there. People love going there. And honestly, I wouldn't have a problem if it stayed in Vegas, as long as it looks good and the image is good and people have fun, because that's what it should be all about. All right, let's go to question 2. This is from SC, the one in the OC. I assume that's Orange County. Mark, you might know this. Erik, you may be able to chime in as well.
But I don't know it. What is that all about, Katz?
Well, Chris,
I don't even know the question, and I've already been told I don't know anything.
Well, there you go with your own persecution complex. We try to stay away from that.
This is why the people want me.
Greg, you have been a hostile witness. Greg has been a hostile witness.
This is why people are saying Arledge should have his own show, because from time to time I don't even get to answer a question, and they're upset. That's fine. Go ahead, answer the question. I'll be quiet.
Do you feel better now?
No.
I didn't think so. All right. Has there been any official or unofficial announcement on when spring practice will be held, whether practices will be open to the media and the fans? This is from SC, the one in Orange County. And also, what did Oklahoma do with regard to practices open or closed or limited in the past administration? Okay, so guys, do you want to jump in first of all and say, what do you hear on the opening of spring ball?
I've had zero updates since that last speculated rumor of, the first week of March. So Erik, have you heard anything?
Yeah, the latest I heard was probably later in March. They do that, there's the spring break that runs from, I think, the 13th to the 20th. And from what I heard, the idea is to maybe start it after that, so that you don't have that week-long break that kind of cuts up how it goes. And that's kind of what Greg referenced earlier, is then you'd be going deeper into April there, where on April 15th, when that evaluation period starts, you can't just flee campus and send coaches everywhere, but maybe you get more recruits and all of that who can come and see more of the practices and that. So again, nothing, definitely nothing official at this point. We're kind of creeping mid-February and getting in there. It's going to start before June. We can say that officially. But yeah, so that's kind of the latest I heard. As far as open or close, I think if it was absolutely 100% up to Lincoln Riley and what he would want to do, he would put these practices underground. They would be absolutely as closed as possible. I think he understands, coming to USC, the way USC has operated in the past with that. There is going to be, again, my assumption, a meeting in the middle of where it is open, how much of it is open, how much of, this whole practice is open, this one's closed, the portion of practice is open, whatever that ends up being, I don't know yet, but it's going to be far more open than he had things at Oklahoma. At Oklahoma, it was very shut down. You had very little access to assistant coaches or players. I think when Caleb Williams went on Good Morning America, the Oklahoma beat kind of lost their collective minds. I think it was like the third time that he had spoken publicly since hitting a college campus. So that's kind of how things operated with the media there. Again, Lincoln Riley early on has seemingly understood what needs to happen now that you're in Los Angeles, with some of these guys and the assistant coaches being available when they did their introductory press conference. So I would anticipate a huge change from what it was at Oklahoma. There's a chance he may, keep things a little bit more locked up compared to what USC has been publicly, but I would still anticipate USC to be an absolute outlier as far as how much media availability there is compared to the rest of the country, where just program after program, coach after coach are shutting media out completely as much as they can. So again, it's always, USC is always going to be, I think, really good about that. When we talk to other media people about, who we can talk to and what practices we can watch, it's kind of jaw dropping for them to hear that USC still does that.
Chris, do you want to chime in on this at all?
No, once you told me I didn't get to answer, I just tuned everything out. I literally haven't been listening to the show for the last 3 minutes.
All right, shows you progress is works slowly. I will say this, based on what I researched on Lincoln Riley, they had a situation that happened, I think it was last year with Caleb, where the media was not supposed to say anything, okay, which is understandable. But apparently the Oklahoma school newspaper went on top of a building and reported seeing that Caleb was starting or what have you. And it just completely blew Lincoln Riley's mind. And he banned all media from watching them practice and stuff, which really, I hate to say it, but the young newspaper really, cut off your nose to spite your face type of thing. It was terrible. I don't think, and I think Erik makes a good point with the Good Morning America thing. If you want to promote your players, you can't do it in silence in LA. You can't say LA is the second or biggest media market and then shut the media off. I don't think SC, to be honest with you, I don't think they're in any position to shut anything off from a good public relations situation. I hope that personally that they, logically present to Lincoln Riley all the benefits. I think he does know it because the way he's tweeting out things, and I hope he will. I know this for the spring game. This what they did last year. They divided the spring game up into two 15-minute halves. Okay, what that's basically a half a football game. I don't know based on television and the Pac-12 network whether that's going to be sufficient for them. I don't think Lincoln Riley will care if that's sufficient to them or not. He'll say this is what we do, work around it or what have you. And I think that he has that right to do that. And I know that they had a big pregame carnival before the spring practice game. So, I think that probably Lincoln Riley will say, hey, this worked at Oklahoma. How does it work here?
That makes sense, though, because most Oklahoma fans are carnies, I think. So I can understand why they would have that before the spring game.
I'm going to let Mark just one very quickly. Would you like to? I know Mark's feelings towards Norman, Oklahoma. He never found a shot he wouldn't take at him. But go ahead, Mark.
No,
back up, Chris.
He cleared the fence with that one. I'm just going to drink my adult beverage and enjoy it. That was
I
great.
increased our ratings by 28% by saying that, because now the OU fan that's still fixated on USC, which is the bulk of them, is going to send this to all of their friends. They're all going to freak out. They're going to say nasty things about me in the comments section, and I'm going to get the last laugh.
They're really easy to tweak. I mean, I literally sent a question: has the Super Bowl ever been held in Norman? And this was, from the view of Lincoln Riley's seats. And the fans in Oklahoma have lost their collective minds over this. And the whole point was, this is why he left. He just literally took a picture and sent it to recruits across the country. Come to Oklahoma and we're going to have the local car dealership bring out all the cool cars and put them in our end zone. Come to USC, and this is kind of what you see every day.
You make a good point. All right, let's move on here. Question 3. This is from Bort Simpson.
That's a great Simpsons episode, by the way. If you've never seen it, that's a classic reference. Good job by that guy. Yeah.
All right. Any sleeper picks for a breakout year from a player no one seems to be discussing? I'm high on Rajon Davis. Go for it, guys. Who is a sleeper pick that nobody is paying attention to?
There are so many to choose from. I'm
Mark,
just going to throw out
one.
Jalen Smith.
For people who are not familiar with Jalen, little background.
He's an athlete. He plays on the defensive side of the ball, safety, nickel. He's just a guy that when he got his opportunities last year, he was always around the ball. He just makes plays. And I think going from his freshman campaign to his sophomore year, I think you're going to see a significant jump from him. He was one of the more unheralded guys in the recruiting class, but he's probably one of the better guys that came out of that class.
Eric?
Yeah, I mean, like Mark said, you can pick so many. At this point, people are only talking about Caleb Williams, so you can pick anyone outside of Caleb Williams, I assume. But one on either side of the ball, I think that kind of maybe fits in there defensively. I'm going to go in the secondary too with Mark and say Prophet Brown. I think he's a guy who could be a guy at corner. I know you brought in, a senior, very veteran guy. And then you also brought in Latrell McCutcheon, who has some experience in this defense and is a younger guy. But I really like Prophet's game and think he could be a good one at corner. And then offensively, you want to go running back, wide receiver, and that kind of thing in this offense. But I've loved what Lake McCree has done since the day that he stepped on campus. And I know Michael Trigg got kind of the attention over him, but he feels like a guy as a tight end that could fit in this offense really well. I think, you've got another guy in Malcolm Epps there at tight end or maybe receiver who could be good, but he's a guy that I like to watch play at least. So I'm gonna say his name for that.
Chris, anybody strike you that you see as a player that nobody's paying attention to?
I'm gonna go with Kyle Ford. We've had a lot of wide receivers come into the program. I don't know that Kyle was 100% healthy last year. It may have been, but sometimes it takes a little bit longer to get over those injuries. But you're talking about a guy who is a 5-star receiver, a big guy who's athletic, and so it wouldn't surprise me at all if he played a pretty big role this year.
Interesting. Good point. I'm going to go. Well, I actually was going to go with just one, but I'll dovetail a little bit on Eric. I think Lake McCree is really a talent. I really do, and he's big and he moves. And I'm not saying he's Drake London by any stretch of imagination, but he showed me in those games he could take a hit. He could take a hit a little bit like this is a bad thing to say because I know it puts a lot of pressure, but a Cooper Kupp type of player that once he gets his feet wet and he gets a little bigger and stronger, I think that he could be a real player. Also a player that the one I want to mention was Michael Jackson III. I think that this guy is electric. And, you hear the other names, Taj Washington and some of the others that are returning. But I thought in the amount of time that he got a chance to show what he could do, he could really be explosive. And I would be surprised if he's not in the mix. And I hope he has a wonderful spring because I think he's got a wonderful talent. And I hope that the coaches will see that. I think they will, because I think he's just that talented. All right, let's go.
Greg, based on what he did in the spring as an early enrollee and during practices, he was the shock for me that it took him that long to get kind of thrown out there consistently. I think anyone who watched practices would have expected him to be on the field a little bit more substantially or earlier in the season. So yeah, I'm right with you on him.
All right, let's move on here. Question 4 from Hector Spector. I apologize, but I guess I'm a little confused. Is there a chance that Brew McCoy will play at USC, or has that ship definitely sailed? Thanks in advance. The answer to that is
no. Ship has sunk. He's gone.
He's gone. He's in the portal, right?
He will never play at USC. Let's just move forward.
All right, there's your answer to that question. Question 5 from Burrito, 03 Burrito, I guess. The question for Greg: do you think the USC needs to add more offensive line depth? And is there someone who you think they would like to pursue in the portal? I'm going to open this up. I think this is a question for the rest of you guys as well. I think they always need help on the offensive line and quality to get depth. I don't know how some of these, I do believe that this offense is going to make a lot of the players better than what they've shown, because I felt they were so restricted. And I've used this term, they were playing in a phone booth. Hey, maybe Brett Nealon, if he gets a chance to pull out as a center, can kick out guys on edge rushers. We don't know. We don't know how good Justin Dedich is going to be where he is. All I know is they're going to have a lot of freedom of movement. And I think when they hit their landmarks, if they can hit him fast enough, all of a sudden people will say, oh my gosh, this is incredible. What a turnaround. Some will say, well, the coaching is great. And I expect the coaching will be exceptional, but the system could change how a lot of these guys look, in my opinion. How do the rest of you guys feel about that?
Well, let's let Chris jump in before he tunes out and we lose him for the rest of the show.
Too late. But look, you always need more high quality offensive linemen. It's the most important part of the team. Whether they have anybody in the portal that they're interested in, I have no idea. But I think the offensive line group's going to be all right, and maybe better than all right. But yeah, if there's a 320-pound guy who can move that wants to come to USC, then I suspect Lincoln Riley will take him with open arms.
You know, it's interesting you say that, Chris, because I was called by a friend of mine this morning, and I have not checked, so I will tell you right now, I haven't. He says that there's an Oklahoma offensive lineman that was once a 5-star that's in the portal. And I don't know if that's true or not because I haven't been able to confirm it. I haven't looked. But, you know, there's going to be guys from some of the top-notch programs that may not be where they liked as far as the depth chart at the end of spring ball. And it's pretty much out there that SC is trying to restructure, rebuild, call it what you want, restock their offensive line. And I think that that's going to be something that everyone's going to see. So it won't surprise me if they bring in 2 more offensive linemen out of the transfer portal. But again, a lot could depend on whether Josh Conerly in Seattle signs with the Trojans. I think if they can get him to sign, I think the door is open for future big time high school offensive linemen. He'll draw that big of attention from the world of offensive linemen. I want to end this segment. It's a very quick question. I don't think we need to make, but I want to get the question because this person I think has been trying to get on the show here. It's from Big Daddy. And Big Daddy says, has there ever been a hire at USC with greater and more immediate expectations and optimism? I assume he's talking about Lincoln Riley. So go for it, guys.
No.
Not close.
No.
Not close.
I think this person was just looking for some affirmation.
Hey, Big Daddy, thank you for watching the show. We're big fans of you too. How's that?
No doubt about it. 100%.
Yeah, no, I mean, Pete Carroll was what, the 4th, 5th choice begging for the job?
Correct.
Before that, nobody was looking forward to Paul Hackett. And, you know, USC social media has created the, this immediate need for success. So, yeah, USC hasn't been in this situation before, so to speak.
I will say this, again, deferring to being an old person, basically. When John McKay left to go to Tampa Bay, it was a big story at the time. Who's going to replace John McKay? And a lot of people said, well, it's going to be Dave Levy. He is the logical choice. And as we know, a lot of times logical choices don't always get picked for whatever happens within the little administration world. They went with John Robinson. And John Robinson had left USC to go to the Oakland Raiders at the time, and they brought him back. And the reason is John Robinson could work a room in the cocktail room, the high booster club rooms, and make people laugh. And, he was a good coach. As we know, he did go to the College Football Hall of Fame. But I know that when he got hired, first there was a disappointment, like, why would you not pick Levy? Because he graduated from UCLA at the time. That was, always seemed to be a kind of a sore spot among SC boosters, although he was a fabulous coach, just fabulous. But when they hired Robinson, there was this idea that they were going to pound the ball and do a lot of what McKay was doing. And in Robinson's first cycle, he lived up to it for the most part. They were really powerful in the late 70s. Kind of started to decline a little bit in the 80s, and he left. But there was anticipation because Robinson, had there been social media, he probably would have really hit the airways. Whether he would have used it like Lincoln Riley, I don't know. But it was an interesting concept. So We're good with that. We're all
Greg,
agreed.
let
Yes,
me hop in just to clean up the previous one. So I'm assuming Bray Walker would be the name, the Oklahoma lineman who went in. He went into the portal December, has been in for a long time. Does not feel like there's a lot of USC interest or mutual. At this point, it doesn't feel like there are offensive linemen right now in the portal. Again, after spring, yeah, there's going to be guys jumping in. And for me, along the offensive line, based on, having the transfer portal now, yeah, I would use whatever available scholarship you had that might be unused going into the season. If you can find a guy who has 1 year left, an interior offensive lineman, a tackle, I'd absolutely bring him in, regardless of kind of what the roster looks like. If he can help you in practice, if it gives you depth, that's something that I think the transfer portal has done. You need a guy who might come in without any kind of guarantee of playing time, but you can do that. You can go find a 1 year guy to just fill out a scholarship if there isn't a walk-on that you can give it to. So I think there's always a reason to bring in big guys to the roster.
Thanks for that update, Eric, and putting a name to that transfer thing. Thank you very much. Okay, guys, we're going to go into overtime with a rather quick but interesting question here. If you were in charge of marketing and promotions at USC and we're having a USC bobblehead giveaway on the first game of the season against the Rice Owls on September 3rd in the Coliseum, who would be that bobblehead? Mark, who would you have?
Reggie Bush, the godfather of NIL. Kick it off, do it right. Yeah, I can't think of a better person.
I actually didn't think of that, but that's a reasonable thought. I would have personal mixed emotions about that, but I think it's definitely a good thought, especially the way he's been making a PR comeback. What do you think, Chris? Who would be your bobblehead?
Oh, I'd make it Lincoln Riley, but I'm enamored by this Reggie Bush idea just to anger the NCAA. In fact, I'd want Reggie not only have a bobblehead, but I want him to be holding the Heisman in the bobblehead. That'd be fantastic.
Just have him pose in the Heisman bobblehead.
Yeah, that'd be great. Let's do
that. As wacky as that sounds, I could see them doing that. Honestly, I could honestly see them doing
if you're listening and watching, you have my permission. Run
there. You go. What better endorsement could you get from the great Marc Kulkin? Eric, what do you think? Who would be your?
Yeah, I've got a bunch of answers. I mean, the obvious one is the Chris Arledge bobblehead. I think that's how you kick off the season.
That's gonna increase the attendance big time if you're getting that.
Right.
With the Bishop,
Eric, that he was too modest to say Chris Arledge, but
I know
I knew someone would. I wasn't going to do it myself.
You know what?
He sent me a text. He said, "Please answer this way."
I think what we should do in the future. And I would need permission from all of you, especially our editor-in-chief, Erik McKinney. The best question submitted for the week gets a Chris Arledge bobblehead.
That is an awesome idea.
Perfect.
And you know what would be really beautiful? Because I've seen this when the Dodgers do it, that you could push a button and the best of Chris's snarky remarks could come out, such as, Greg, you fill in the blank, however he wants to do it. We'd allow Chris to give maybe 4 or 5 of his most famous comments. I think that every fan that at one point we had 12,000 fans listening to this. Can you imagine that the amount of excitement, momentum we could get?
I didn't know I was going to get an NIL deal out of this. This is very exciting for me.
Well, you deserve it. I don't think anyone would argue about that. You are deserving of it. So, Eric, did you want to say something besides the obvious Chris Arledge?
If we couldn't get the rights, right? If he's too much to get the likeness, the petty answer is a Sooner schooner where the wheels bobble off.
Oh, yes.
Go with that. I really like Mark's answer of Reggie Bush. I would do maybe all 7 Heisman winners, all the heads bobble. The answer Chris already got. I'm just talking around because I don't really want to agree with Chris, but yeah, Lincoln Riley is the answer of how.
So you don't have to agree with me. I'm going to change my vote. I want a Marc Kulkin bobblehead with a little tiny Bruce Willis bobblehead right behind him.
Forced perspective, Bruce Willis way in the background. Yeah,
that is classic.
A bottle of Mad Dog in the background.
That is classic.
Yes, we're doing it.
Well, I'll tell you, I hate because my feeling is with Reggie is obviously he never apologized. I don't want to get into it. It's the end of the show. We've had a great show, but I could see logic in it. I could also see logic in Lincoln Riley because you're trying to promote something that definitely would not be controversial. I don't think Reggie Bush's bobblehead would be that controversial, to be honest with you. I think by the time he's sold how many Wendy's hamburgers, and by the time he's, taken enough snapshots with Caleb Williams, I don't think Caleb Williams is quite ready for the, bobblehead march, at least at the start of the season. Maybe if he's really running good, maybe Notre Dame game, give him a bobblehead for that one if he's really thick in the Heisman Trophy race or what have you. But okay, here it comes. Here it comes.
A dancing Brian Kelly bobblehead. That would be, it sort of spins around and his head bobbles as he dances. That'd be
the hips can bobble.
Oh,
yeah.
That's amazing.
For the Notre Dame game, that would be great.
What a visual. That is awesome.
Well, I'll tell you what, I think we're going to have to go to the On3 USC marketing department and bring up these ideas, and we'll create our own bobblehead for the week. And maybe we can give something out to the fans, at least in an imaginary way. So good job, guys. All right, let's wrap this thing up. This has been this edition of Inside the Trojans Huddle. A big thank you to this week's panel of Marc Kulkin, Chris Arledge, and Erik McKinney. And a big thank you to all of you for watching or listening to Inside the Trojans Huddle. So until next Tuesday, this is your host, Greg Katz, reminding you all to fight on, everybody.